We who have spent a dozen or dozens of Christmases in church know that we have procedures for how we celebrate Christmas. I mean, we don't call them procedures, that would be gauche. We lovingly refer to them as traditions, customs. In some churches, these traditions border on doctrine in terms of the ferocity with which they are repeated in the same way year after year after year. For example, I remember my first church, which we built while I was the pastor. At our first Christmas service in our brand new church, I asked the members what they needed to see in the church to make it seem like Christmas. A really ill-advised question for a new pastor, I might add. The answers included a tree, check, an Advent wreath, check. The nativity, meaning the one that the person who said this wanted to use, or all of the nativities in the entire church, check. The choir who would sing 3 songs as the prelude, and lights that outlined the huge cross behind the altar that we would only turn on during the singing of Silent Night. We did everything except the lights around the cross, and it was quite clear afterward that the person who wanted that felt like she had not experienced Christmas in her new church. When I asked her later why it was so important to her, the lights on the cross, she said, because that's how they did it in the church I grew up in, and I thought they did it in every Lutheran church. The truth is that tonight, we in the church are all feeling like that woman over something. We each have traditions and customs we look forward to that mark these holy nights in the life of a congregation. Normally, there would be a beautiful, tall Christmas tree in that corner. In my own personal tradition, we would light the tree on Christmas Eve and not once before that. In fact, at this church, I learned we light the tree whenever someone walks over and plugs it in on any given Sunday that it's up. But this year, in the place where that tree would have been, is a makeshift recording studio complete with a green screen and plexiglass dividers on rollers, headphones, microphone, music stands, a table with face masks and hand sanitizer. This year, we don't even have the tradition of bickering about when to turn the tree lights on. This year, when we have lost so much, people, pets, jobs, sense of safety, businesses, freedom, trust in those elected to make decisions more often for the greater good. Longing for our traditions this year feels acute. I even found myself longing for the preparation of those traditions. For example, more than once I walked through this echoing sanctuary, imagining myself reminding the ushers to set up extra chairs and open the dividers, even though those same ushers set up the extra chairs and opened the dividers long before I ever arrived, every year. The chairs in this sanctuary that would normally be filled with the choir are empty and stacked against the wall in place of a choir sparkling from beneath the cross. Each player came in and recorded their part separately in front of a green screen in front of the quilt. Each part was then uploaded, mixed with the voices of others who recorded their one part alone, uploaded to the Google Drive, then downloaded, combined with images, subtitled, copyrighted, and processed. And then finally uploaded to YouTube, where it was processed, closed captions were added, and it was scheduled for you to watch right now. And yes, it is a wonder of technology that all that can happen for every part of worship and come together so that we can worship virtually like this every week. And oh, what I wouldn't give to see and hear the choir live tonight, and to be watching the back of the room to see if we needed to set up more chairs. All this musing about how different things were this year made me wonder how I might preach about this ancient story that grounds our faith in a way that would parallel all the new ways we have been doing things, so as to not have us get lost in nostalgia for how we should have had a children's program, and the nativities should be set up, and certainly the tree. Then last night, I was reading updates from colleagues also wrestling with their Christmas Eve sermon, and the extent to which their new plans and backup plans had been derailed was staggering. Family members had died. Colleagues had died. Church musicians were sick. Council members were saying goodbyes to loved ones on iPads. Churches had been turned into shelters and makeshift hospitals. And we're all doing pastoral care via Zoom. Finally, I ran across an account from a pastor who told this story. She wrote, "I talked with a physician yesterday when I took my dad to an appointment. A physician, like St. Luke, whose account of the night Jesus was born we read every year. The physician talked a lot about the Christmas story from what I'd call the historical critical method, a process we learned in seminary. He reminded me that at the time that Jesus was born, when a refugee couple showed up looking for lodging, the owner had three choices. He could not answer the door, but he did answer the door. He could have told them where they could find lodging, but he didn't. Or he could offer them whatever he could, and that was the option he chose. He put them in the stable, which wasn't an outbuilding somewhere, as our nativity scenes suggest. It would have been the bottom floor of his home, where there would be a manger from which the animals got their feed. And yes, the animals lived there." She wrote, "I've been ordained for 27 years, and I've always looked at the stable, wherever it is, being an important and lowly place. But the physician reminded me that the innkeeper was probably just a guy in the city. A guy who didn't choose option 1 or 2, he chose option 3, letting the Holy Family with the very pregnant woman stay in his lower level with the livestock, because there they would get some privacy and be protected from the elements. But what's more, the animals weren't relegated to a stable. The animals were of highest regard to the innkeeper. They were his wealth. That was how he took care of his family. The place he kept them was a place over which he was a mindful steward, and he did this with care and concern for the animals. So Mary and Joseph weren't relegated to a lowly place. They were deeply trusted to rest beside the greatest earthly treasure the man had." He went on to say that the gifts, which I've always interpreted to be for Jesus, were more likely gifts for the world. Gold was a sign of wealth, a sign that a person would never be in want again. Frankincense was a gift of power that comes through death. It is used to anoint the dying and the dead. Myrrh had medicinal properties. It was a gift of healing. And as this physician gently and meticulously opened the wound on my father's foot, he continued to draw me into this new vision of the Christmas story. He said, these are the 3 gifts for us in the birth of Christ. The gifts that suggest we will no longer be in want. We shall not be afraid of death. We are no longer stuck in illnesses without hope. Of course, when we look around, we see lots of places where want, death, and illness are all too true and real. In fact, many people's lives right now revolve around them. And yet, this physician concluded by saying that at the birth of Jesus, the world would change. That Christmas is more about our relationships with each other, not with God. He said, and I agree, Easter is about our relationship with God. And as we live our lives and do our ministries, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh are given to us to equip us to carry on the mission. He suggested that the biggest problem we have today is that not enough people hear the angels in the cry of the oppressed, the need of the hungry, the pain of the world. But those who do hear it, like Mary and Joseph, take it up and carry it forward for a world in need of a God who can do anything but fail. My colleague finished up by saying, so there I was, watching him do an in-office surgical procedure on a wound that has started with bone infection in my dad's feet. And I'm in tears, because as he peeled away the dead layers and opened the wound so that it could be healed, it felt like the Christmas story. It felt like that room was cradling us in a manger. It was holy, and I was being given gifts I needed to take out into the world. Isn't it amazing? Here's this physician who was swamped with getting people in before the holidays for their insurance purposes, and he took the time to stop, to find a room, to open a wound of a bone infection in an elderly man so that the infection could heal from the inside out. That man had more years to live. And I can't help but think, as I look at this empty, chaotic sanctuary, that maybe that's what this whole pandemic is about. We all need to be healed from the inside out. We need to have our wounds opened so that the healing can begin. We needed to be still and let the great physician talk to us about our condition and the condition of our fellow citizens, our siblings, God's people, many of whom we have taken for granted, who still make very low wages and now are unemployed. We needed to get through a Christmas in a new way, perhaps, to prepare to go forward and to go home by a new road. Beloved people of God, I know we are all missing our traditions, and more than that, we are missing our people. This certainly is not the Christmas we wanted, but maybe this is exactly the Christmas we need. And if that is so, let us rejoice, because our healing has begun.
Once upon a time, in a far-off land, wise men saw a sign and set out across the sand, songs of praise to sing. They traveled day and night, precious gifts to bring. They were guided by the light.
They chased a brand new star ever towards the west, across the mountains far. But when it came to rest, they scarce believed their eyes. They'd come so many miles, the miracle they prized was nothing but a child, nothing but a child could wash those tears away, or guide a weary world into the light of day. Nothing but a child could help erase those miles, so once again we all
Can be children for a while.
all around the world, in every little town, every day is heard a precious little sound, and every mother kind and every father proud looks down in awe to find another chance allowed. Nothing but a child could wash those tears away, or guide a weary world into the light of day. Nothing but a child could help erase those miles, so once again we all can be children for a while.
Nothing but a little baby,
Nothing but a little